Are you guys ready? Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Kalispell City Planning Commission. Today is Tuesday, June 9th. Can we get a roll call, please?
Dustin Lethbridge, Kate Walker,
Here.
Brett Huff,
Here.
Cody Hunter,
Here.
Dub Kaufman,
Here.
Emmett Van Allen, Rory Young.
Here. Plenty of us here tonight. Can I get a motion? Has everyone had a chance to look through the minutes? Everyone's happy, can get a motion on that, please.
I move approval of the minutes of May 12th, 2026 for the Kalispell City Planning Commission as published.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Seeing none opposed, minutes are approved. We move into hear the public. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to give us your thoughts on anything that is not on our agenda tonight. And we do not have any agenda items tonight. We do have a work session after this meeting, but for the meantime, hear the public. Anyone has any thoughts that they would like to share with the commission tonight, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and give us your thoughts.
That is regarding nothing that's on this agenda, is that what you're saying?
Yes, there are no agenda items tonight, so if you have anything to bring to the commission tonight, bring it now.
If this is the only opportunity, I'm James Thompson. I live at 144 Northland Drive, Kalispell. I'm concerned about the Habitat Project. I don't want to get into the fact whether it's needed or not, but from a planning standpoint, I think you should seriously consider requiring the future access to be included in the requirements for this project. Dumping all that traffic on the Northland Drive will be a complete disaster. Even though you have two access points, they still all end up on Northland Drive. That's 100 houses if you get it built out. Northland Drive already supports all of the Northland subdivision, plus a lot of what's up and down Northridge Drive, everything. It's the easiest and the only access to 4 Mile Drive. And to trip all that traffic out of this subdivision down Northland Drive. Northland Drive literally is not wide enough to handle that kind of traffic. If you look at Northland Drive on a busy weekend at Kids Sports, it's part of the parking lot for Kids Sports. Narrows the road down, it just can't handle the load. The other point on the proposal is that you're bringing 100 houses into a upper class neighborhood, homes, probably nothing less than 600,000. You're bringing 100 houses into that neighborhood, or dwelling units, that are probably going to be 300,000 to 400,000 less in value than those homes. You're going to destroy the property values on Northland Drive in that complete subdivision area. If you want to see what you're going to be getting in this subdivision, I encourage you to go down to Summers and look at Tybucker Estates and some of those lots that Habitat have built on. You will see lack of pride of ownership, inability to keep them painted, maintained, multiple broken down vehicles. This is what you're asking to bring into this nice neighborhood. Or they're asking. You have to have some kind of controls. A homeowners association is only as good as who's running the homeowners association. On Northland Drive, we have one house that's a rental. They never mow their yard. Lack of ownership pride. Now, I realize that some habitat houses are just fine, but you're gonna get a mixed bag. You're creating a new west side for Kalispell. If you don't pay attention to this project, and you better have the access because it will be a traffic nightmare for everybody, besides destroying property values in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Pedersen. I'm a local business owner of a company with about 80 employees. And I also wanted to comment on the Northland Drive proposal. I live within about 150 feet of the proposed development, so I'll be directly impacted. And I actually live directly on Northland Drive. So just to kind of echo what he said, the traffic can be a problem, especially when there's like a soccer tournament or something. There's also a lot of throughput in which people drive a little bit too fast. It worries us with our 6-year-old on the street, so having more traffic on there would be a worry. Just to be clear though, I'm not opposed to growth or housing. I just have some concerns with approving the annexation for the project in its current form. The proposal, as I read it, combines like annexation of higher density zoning and like multiple requested deviations. So you've got smaller lot sizes and reduced park space. So in my view, that's a lot to approve all at once without like stronger validations that it aligns with the surrounding neighborhoods and your long-term planning goals. I'm also concerned about relying solely on the developer's conclusions regarding traffic and infrastructure impacts. From my perspective, those conditions, like I echoed, already feel strained. Like I spoke and he spoke about, like if you drive by on a soccer tournament, the road conditions are impacted quite a bit. So I would just encourage you guys to require like a more conservative or approach, independently validated assumptions before moving forward. One thing to point out, like at this point, annexation is really our primary leverage point in the process. So once it's approved, the ability for residents to influence the outcomes is going to become a lot more limited. So my simple request is that it slows down a little bit. We ensure the density, infrastructure capacity, and the deviations are fully justified, making sure that it's fully compatible with the adjacent neighborhoods. So, thanks.
Could I get you to repeat your name and address for me, please?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Pedersen, and my address is 132 Northland Drive.
And Pedersen, you said?
Yeah, P-E-D-E-R-S-E-N.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hello, my name is Mary Beth Morand, and I'm the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity of Flathead Valley, and we are at 2535 Highway 93 South in Kalispell. So Habitat for Humanity of Flathead Valley seized the opportunity to buy this parcel of land at auction from the Montana Department of Transportation in order to collaborate with private sector colleagues to bring affordable housing online quickly and efficiently while creating a new model for private sector plus nonprofit relationships. To be clear, about 30 of the homes in this development will be Habitat. We would like Birchwood to, which we're calling the neighborhood, to serve as a template for more mixed income neighborhoods where I think you could expect to find the houses priced between $350,000 to $800,000. So it's not all Habitat homes, just to be clear about that. But there is a significant affordable component, and that's part of our partnership with the private sector developers. Habitat for Humanity is currently building 10 houses per year and will move toward 20 houses per year in the next 2 years. We all know that we need a lot more affordable housing than 20 houses per year in the Flathead Valley. However, our model breaks when we approach 20 houses per year because of volunteership and the sweat equity requirements for our homeowners. So this is why we need to work with private sector production builders. And Habitat can help them to build more houses to meet the urgent demand for affordable housing in the Flathead. In short, through projects like Birchwood, Habitat helps private sector builders to be able to afford to build affordably. And in this current economic climate of inflation of both land and construction prices, I think we all need to come together and leverage our strengths to get more affordable units online through partnerships like this. Habitat provides partners with opportunities to co-build neighborhoods where Habitat has acquired the land at below market prices, such as by getting it at auction. Habitat sells the lots to private sector partners in an agreement where the partners offer affordability tools to their home buyers, such as buying down mortgage interest rates. Habitat, in these partnerships, we are not cutting down the home prices or undercutting comps. Let's be clear about that. Habitat and the partners work together to covenant restrict the neighborhood for ownership only to obstruct rentals and investor buyers. Habitat homes, as you probably all know, are very heavily deed restricted. But this whole neighborhood would be covenant restricted too for ownership only. Habitat and partners market the neighborhood to major employers in and near Kalispell to engage their financial and organizational resources to support ownership opportunities for their key staff. Again, these are people who are deeply embedded in our community and are working for our key employers. Birchwood is an innovative project that relies on grassroots and community-wide platform of multiple stakeholders in civil society, including the city, businesses, nonprofits, schools. Student-built homes will also be a part of Birchwood, and faith-based organizations to work together to solve for this complex socioeconomic problem of affordable housing. It's an intricate problem. It's a dilemma for all of us. We all need to pitch in and look at it for what it's really doing for our neighbors, our friends, or as otherwise called our workforce. But they're people who need housing opportunities and ownership opportunities, and they don't need them 5 years from now or 10 years from now. They need them now. I would like to mention that Habitat has recently built 5 very attractive homes in Summers. I don't know about the ones that were referred to. And they're on School Addition Road, and I think if you drove by them, you'd find them to be in good shape. Habitat for Humanity of Flathead Valley also runs a mentorship program that's a year long that teaches our homeowners how to keep up their home, financial planning, and how to be good neighbors. And I would note also that the traffic impact study in your documents was an independent report and not produced by Habitat for Humanity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kisa Davison. I reside at 312 6th Avenue East in Kalispell, but I'm here on behalf of Iron Star Construction, who's one of the private sector builders participating in the planning of Birchwood, and we plan to also participate in the building out of Birchwood. We also were the general contractor, we're halfway through building 14 units on Northridge Drive, just adjacent to this property. So I think we've certainly added to the community, and we plan to continue building out in Birchwood. We support this project and initially started working with Mary Beth and the Habitat team because we know firsthand that Kalispell needs more attainable homeownership opportunities. This project, through the course of the last year, as we've been putting it together, is practical and a very buildable way to provide those opportunities. From our perspective as a builder, affordability is shaped long before construction actually starts. Land cost, lot size, infrastructure, access, setbacks, site layout, all of these things affect the final price of a home. So the requested deviations in your packet are not about lowering standards or making things easier for us. They're actually very practical tools that will help reduce the cost carried by each home while still allowing for sidewalks, open spaces, parks, neighborhood design, and a mix of housing types. I also understand that there's sometimes concern that flexibility in housing projects only benefits builders and developers. Some of the bullet points that Mary Beth outlined certainly will ensure that this doesn't happen, but I do understand the global concern of that. Be clear that feasibility is not the same thing as favoritism. We know all too well that if a project cannot be built, it does not become housing. And if it does not become housing, then it doesn't help any of our local businesses or our local families. One of the most important aspects that Mary Beth touched on of Birchwood is that it's designed as a community of homeowners. The CCNRs will not allow for those long-term or short-term rentals. That means this project is not creating an investor-owned housing or transient occupancy. It's creating long-term homeownership. That point itself really matters to Kalispell. It's to our community's advantage to not only have homeowners who are taking care of their homes, but also those are the homeowners who pay taxes, who participate in their local neighborhoods and their local communities, and they become invested in the neighborhood and in the broader happening and planning in the community. The other important distinction is that Birchwood does not rely on a model that removes property from the local tax base through waived or reduced property taxes. Some affordable housing models require those ongoing public subsidies or tax relief in order to operate. Birchwood is different. It creates attainable home ownership while still contributing to the community's funding base. This project just isn't about adding housing units, or it's not only about adding housing units. It's about creating a more stable neighborhood of local homeowners, attainable housing options, a mix of supply, and very thoughtful design. That partnership between Habitat for Humanity, the private sector, and community partners and the city is really the kind of partnership and teamwork that we need if we're going to tackle this housing concerns that we have in our community. So respectfully, I ask you to review all the details, but also please support this PUD, including all the requested deviations, because they are directly connected to this project's affordability, feasibility, and the total public benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
My name is Sarah. I'm a homeowner in the Northridge area, and I just question this traffic impact study. Right now, we're seeing an awful lot of increased traffic just from the homes that are built. And my understanding with the community is that all of the homes from Birchwood would spill out, the traffic would spill out into the Northland community. Already, when we're pulling out of our driveway, there's a lot of kind of blind corners. Trying to exit onto 4 Mile is kind of a nightmare. So I don't know how this study was conducted, but I'm very, very concerned, not only about my neighborhood, but also Birchwood. And if something were to happen, how all 95 units would be able to exit. It looks like there was just one exit point. I'd want to look a little closer at that, please.
Thank you.
Can I get your last name and address, please?
Richardson, 139 Northland Drive.
Any other public comment? Seeing no more public comment, I'm going to close tonight's Hear the Public. For those of you who step forward tonight, we have a work session at the end of this meeting to discuss between staff and the commission the Birchwood development. If that does move forward, it would come before the Planning Commission again in a month's time.
Correct. Yeah, next
And
month.
you are welcome to come back and tell us your thoughts again. Moving on with our meeting tonight, old business.
So old business, last month we looked at the public participation plan that was kind of tied to Malupa, a lot of the procedural changes that were going on with that, kind of outlining the public notice that would take place moving forward under Malupa and some of the changes there. That did go in front of the city council and was approved at their last meeting.
New business?
So new business, next meeting that you would have with Planning Commission's scheduled for July 14th. Presumably Birchwood, if that moves forward from here, would be scheduled for a public hearing at that point. Also, at some point in time, we'll have an upcoming work session, whether that's in July or later in the summer, But City Council last night had a work session on a number of different items, one of which was Parkline Trail Design Standards. So basically applying design standards to properties that would butt up to the trail. What they looked at the end was kind of deferring that down to the Planning Commission to get some ideas that then may come back up later on. But we'll be working on that at some point, but that's not specifically scheduled. It could potentially be as early as July or later in the summer.
Thank you. Anything from the board before we move into our work session? The board, the commission. You guys, if anyone wants to stay around for the work session, you're welcome to. But it is just between staff and the applicant.
It is in general.
and the
As with
commission,
any
right?
meeting, there's the opportunity to have public comment, but you open that up for, during hear the public on that. I think that there's representatives from the applicant that were available for questions, both here and as well as online through Zoom too. And they'd be able to participate and answer questions. And just so the public is aware and any new board members, the intent tonight is just to be able to get everybody's arms around a project. PUDs tend to be larger projects, and that's part of the process that's outlined in our ordinance, is having a work session. It's intended to identify any issues, if there's additional information that might be necessary before it moves forward to a public hearing. But technically, tonight is not a public hearing. Technically, there's no motion to move forward a recommendation, and that would be coming later on.
But the comments that we did have this evening are part of this evening's record.
Correct, yeah.
Cool. Last chance? Nope. We're adjourned.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donnie McBath, Planner 2. Tonight's work session is intended to provide an overview of the Birchwood annexation and plan unit development, applications, and identify key policy, design, and technical issues identified during staff review. The proposal consists of approximately 21.32 acres located west of Northland Drive, south of 4 Mile Drive, east of US Highway 93 alternate corridor, and north of North Ridge Way. The applicant is Habitat for Humanity of Flathead Valley. The proposal includes an annexation into the city of Kalispell and approval of a planned unit development consisting of approximately 95 residential units and a mixture of detached single-family homes, cottages, and townhomes. This work session is informational only and no action is requested tonight. As this is a work session, commissioners should feel free to stop me at any time with questions or discussion. Staff welcomes feedback throughout the presentation, and I'm happy to address any items we move forward through various topics rather than waiting until the end. One of the most important aspects of this application is that it's being reviewed under the city's recently adopted Kalispell Land Use Plan and the MLUPA, Montana Land Use Planning Act. Historically, major developments often moved through annexation, zoning, subdivision, and development review concurrently. Under the new framework, these processes are more clearly separated. Tonight's review focuses on annexation, initial zoning, and a plan unit development framework. Future subdivision, engineering, parkland, utility, and final plat review will occur separately. The site was previously associated with Montana Department of Transportation, activities related to construction of Highway 93 alternate corridor. Habitat for Humanity acquired the property in 2025 with the goal of developing a mixed-income residential community, emphasizing attainable housing opportunities. Surrounding development consists primarily of residential neighborhoods, including Northland and other residential projects in northwest Kalispell. The Birchwood PUD proposes approximately 95 residential units on 21.32 acres. The applicant proposes a variety of housing products, including detached single-family homes, cottage-style housing clusters, and townhomes. The proposal includes approximately 4.46 dwelling units per gross acre and emphasizes attainable housing through smaller lots, shared open space, and diverse housing types. The PUD application requests several deviations from the standard development requirements. The most significant requests include elimination of east and west roadway connections, use of alley-loaded product types, reduced lot sizes, and reduced lot widths. Staff continues to evaluate these requests relative to connectivity, emergency access, maintenance responsibilities, and consistency with the land use plan. And as you can see, I'll show you this really quick. There's an access here that will be provided. Access here that is provided as well. And then up here will be a hammerhead turnaround, and this will also come to a hammerhead or future.
Okay, but all that traffic still ends up on Northland Drive.
Correct.
Yeah, I live in this neighborhood, so I'm pretty familiar.
The applicant submitted a geotechnical investigation report prepared by Alpine Geotechnical dated August 19th, 2025. And to mention, commissioners, I think this is probably going to be the most important part of this conversation tonight. This report is one of the most significant technical documents associated with the Birchwood proposal because it evaluates the site's suitability for the future infrastructure, roadways, utilities, grading activities, and residential development. The report identifies the property as a known fill site associated with previous construction activities related to the U.S. Highway 93 alternative corridor. Alpine's investigation found variable depths of previous placed fill material across the site, generally ranging from approximately 5 feet to more than 17 feet thick. Beneath the fill, the borings primarily encountered silt materials and native gravel identified only in isolated portions of the property. Importantly, Alpine states that from a geotechnical perspective, the property presents significant concerns for the design and construction of the proposed residential subdivision. The concern is not that the site cannot be developed, but rather that the variable fill conditions will require substantial engineering, grading, and construction oversight to ensure long-term performance. The report notes that due to the site's topography and existing fill conditions, existing cut and embankment fill operations will be necessary. Alpine recommends significant subgrade preparation measures, including removal and replacement of the upper 24 inches beneath the pavement and hardscape areas within public rights-of-way. The report further recommends installation of geotextile stabilization fabric, triaxial geogrid reinforcement beneath the roadway sections to improve the structural performance and reduce the potential for future settlement. Another important finding relates to the future lot development. Because subsurface conditions vary throughout the property, Alpine indicates that the foundation preparation and design may need to be tailored to site-specific conditions encountered during development. In other words, not every lot will necessarily have the same geotechnical characteristics, and future engineering review will need to ensure that each lot is suitable for the development and that any required foundation recommendations are incorporated into final construction plans. The report also emphasizes the importance of construction observation and testing. Alpine specifically recommends that a geotechnical engineer remain involved during the grading and earthwork operations to verify compactation, evaluate subgrade conditions, and ensure that recommendations contained in the report are properly implemented. The report notes that close monitoring will be essential to achieving satisfactory performance of embankments, roadways, utilities, and future building sites. Groundwater was not encountered during the investigation. However, Alpine notes that seasonal groundwater fluctuations and localized perched groundwater conditions may occur and should be considered during future engineering design. From a staff perspective, the geotechnical report does not identify a fatal flaw that would preclude development of the property. However, it is clearly identifies significant engineering considerations related to fill management, roadway construction, grading foundation design, and construction oversight. Staff believes these issues will need to be carried forward into future subdivision engineering, infrastructure, and building review to ensure the site can safely and successfully be developed.
Don,
Yes, sir.
before you go, so we will see this as an annexation and a PUD, and then staff will see the subdivision, right? The preliminary plat, it'll go through administrative review.
Yes, sir.
So typically, if we were doing preliminary plat at the same time as PUD, we would have one set of conditions that would be for the PUD, and then we normally reuse those on the preliminary plat.
That's correct. And sometimes additional conditions get added in through the course of planning to city council, but that's,
Yeah, so that's why I guess what I'm just trying to think through the process here. So normally then we would get preliminary plat approval with a bunch of conditions. When we get to final plat, it's up to the applicant to then show that they've met all of those. That whole process will still stay the same.
that's my understanding.
Right. So the process splits from what you're used to, and you're right. I mean, typically what you would have would be the PUD conditions and the plat conditions would essentially be the same. Some would apply more to the PUD and some would apply more to the plat. Here they are kind of split out. A lot of those same factors, though, are still relevant. You know, if you're looking at lot size, you know, down to I think it's 3,100 square feet, the geotech becomes relevant in that situation. You know, the ability to put some of the improvements in there, geotech is relevant to that situation. So it's still applicable to looking at the PUD. It's maybe more directly applicable when you're looking at the plat, which, as you mentioned, becomes administrative under this process. But it's still definitely something that you have to take in consideration as to whether or not this general layout is something that you would want in place as part of the PUD.
Yeah, and I guess where my question is going is that, so there will most likely be on the face of the plat some kind of notice about requiring site-specific geotechnical reports.
Typically that doesn't show up on the face of the plat, but it would be something that would likely be a PUD condition and a plat condition. We've done similar types of conditions in a couple other subdivisions that had geotech issues. You know, part of it is that if the geotech is calling out, you know, site-wide issues like that, you know, it's hard to specify one area or the other. What we've done in those other situations required site-specific geotech, which is typically done with commercial, but isn't typically done with residential. Usually if there's a residential subdivision and you can see that, you know, there's an appropriate number of test holes and you can see that it works for the entire development. Here it's kind of the opposite. So some of that testing showed that there are concerns that are probably site-wide. There's ways that they can potentially mitigate that, which would obviously add cost to what's going on. The geotech talked about, you know, even in some situations doing the helical piers, whether there's other types of, you know, excavation, and then putting the compacted fill, which, you know, you typically would be doing testing every few inches in that situation to show that it's an effective building pad. I know that's something that their engineers are aware of, that's an issue that they'll need to work through. So it's certainly something that needs to be looked at and have an appropriate condition on. But as Donnie mentioned, it doesn't mean that you can't build there, but there's certainly some significant considerations on how you would build there.
And just to be clear, that, like Donnie said, this is the thing to pay attention to, but we realize that this is an important part, but we are confident that our PUD conditions and the process that we are going to go through will address any concerns that there are about geotechnical. We may not address them all as part of the PUD, but we will have conditions that address.
Potentially, we'll need to see as it develops and moves forward with how we would put those conditions, but one way or the other, you'd have to have those addressed, and would include some condition in the PUD.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, moving forward. The applicant submitted a traffic impact study prepared by WGM Group to evaluate the transportation impacts associated with the proposed Birchwood development. The study evaluates a residential development consisting of approximately 95 units, including a detached single-family homes, cottages, and townhomes. Based on an Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation data, the study estimates the development will generate approximately 1,014 average daily trips at a full build-out. Primary access to the development is proposed through Northland Drive and North Ridge Way. The internal roadway system is designed to provide circulation throughout the neighborhood while supporting the overall PUD design concept and housing layout. The proposal includes a future roadway extension to the north intended to accommodate long-term connectivity as adjacent properties develop. However, the applicant is also requesting flexibility from traditional connectivity requirements by eliminating roadway connections to the east and west. According to the application, this approach is intended to reduce cut-through traffic, support the neighborhood design, and create a more cohesive residential environment. The project also incorporates alley-loaded housing products and a private alley access serving groups of residential lots. These design elements are intended to support the compact neighborhood design, increase housing opportunities, and reduce the visual impact of garages and driveways along primary streets. Staff has been reviewing these requests in coordination with Public Works to evaluate emergency access, roadway functionality, maintenance responsibilities, snow storage, utility placement, and long-term connectivity objectives. The traffic impact study identifies a projected one-level reduction in level of service under future conditions. While this represents a measurable decrease in operational performance, the study concludes that the affected roadway facilities are expected to continue operating at an acceptable level. Based on the findings of the traffic impact study, the projected reduction does not exceed the city's threshold requiring mitigation, and no roadway improvements are currently recommended as a result of the project.
Keith just escaped in the nick of time here, but we don't allow a reduction in level of service.
That is correct.
I know Keith was looking at what type of mitigation may be necessary for that, and there was discussions about that, but that would need to be mitigated as part of the project.
And then just while I'm thinking about it, I as part of if this does move forward to Planning Commission, could we get an exhibit that shows what that subdivision to the east,
Right,
how
and-
that's laid out? Because I think we have preliminary plat on part of that, right?
Correct. There's preliminary plat for, I think it was phase, I can't remember if it was 5D or what it was, but part of there's Northland Phase 5 portion that was there. Yes, there is a preliminary plat. And I think that's part of the deviation request for that interconnectivity to the east. And it's not just the fact that there's existing development there, because a potential connection was looked at in conjunction with that preliminary plat as well. It's the topography there makes it almost impossible to make that type of a connection because it's a very steep hill that comes down, and I think that's driving it more than some of the other things that were stated.
And I remember going through that when we looked at that property to the east, but it would just be helpful to be able to see.
It would be, and that topography and the pitch down was why there wasn't a provision in the Northlands phase for a connection. But yeah, good point, adding that in and how that would interplay.
Just an exhibit to see the two side by side so we can
Yeah.
confirm that there's no obvious connections that we're missing.
All right, let's see here. At this stage, staff does not view traffic as a fatal flaw for the project. The study indicates the transportation network is capable of accommodating the proposed development, although roadway design, access management, alley functionality, emergency access, and long-term connectivity will continue to be evaluated through future review processes. Because subdivision and engineering approvals are separate from this PUD review, detailed roadway design, intersection improvements, utility conflicts, drainage improvements, and final infrastructure requirements will be addressed during the future subdivision and engineering review. Due to the property's proximity to the US Highway 93 alternative, the applicant submitted an acoustical analysis prepared by Big Sky Acoustics to evaluate potential traffic noise impacts on future residents. The study evaluated projected traffic volumes and associated noise levels along the western edge of the development adjacent to the bypass corridor. Based on the analysis, portions of the proposed residential development would be exposed to traffic noise levels exceeding commonly accepted residential outdoor activity standards without mitigation. The highest impacts are concentrated along the western edge of the development near the highway corridor. The report identifies several residential lots where noise levels would exceed 60 decibels, threshold commonly used for residential outdoor living areas. To address these impacts, the acoustical study recommends construction of a sound continuing system consisting of a 6-foot sound wall placed on top of a 2-foot berm. Together, these improvements would create a total mitigation height of approximately 8 feet. The report indicates that the implementation of the recommendation mitigation, that's a lot of words right there, measures would reduce traffic noise levels to an acceptable residential standards for the affected portions of the project. The applicant appears to have anticipated this issue during the project design. Significant open space areas have been incorporated along portions of the western boundary adjacent to the bypass corridor. These open space areas may provide opportunities for placement of berms, walls, landscaping, or other noise mitigation features while minimizing impacts on residential lots. From a staff perspective, several issues remain under review. Final location of the mitigation improvements, ownership and maintenance responsibilities, HOA obligations, visual impacts of the wall and berm, integration with landscaping and open space areas, future engineering requirements, long-term maintenance and replacement obligations. While the acoustical study identifies a solution, the details regarding implementation will need to be further refined as the project moves into future phases of review. It is important to note that the acoustical study does not conclude that the residential development is inappropriate at this location. Rather, it identifies a mitigation strategy intended to reduce noise exposure to acceptable levels of future residents. And I guess on these maps here, best way to show you is this one here is a 2046 with no barrier. And you can see where all the decibel levels come out to, being where the property line starts here. And then on this side here is figure 4, and that is with the 8-foot barrier along the bike trail here and the significant reduction in decibel levels. Staff has identified several administrative and technical items requiring additional review or clarification. These include verification of recorded boundary line relocation, final legal description verification, parkland calculations, and HOA documentation. These items are not necessary fatal flaws, but are issues staff intends to resolve before completion of final findings. And that is everything this evening.
Is there no common area along or buffer along the bypass?
I'm sorry, what did you ask?
Is there no common area or buffer required along the bypass?
So there isn't required buffer area. So what they are required to do is to have the noise mitigation under the subdivision regulations down to 60 decibels. And so one strategy for doing that would be to have, either a landscape berm or a sound wall or a combination, which they're proposing here. And then probably what they would need would be to have some kind of a common area for that to be in, just like you'd have any other type of open space landscape feature that needs common maintenance.
But they don't have like a 50-foot or 100-foot requirement
No.
on any of the corridor. Okay, that's what I was asking.
Can we go through the list of deviations that they're requesting as
We
part
could
of
real
the
quick.
PUD?
So their engineer had his hand up. I don't know if he was trying to address that comment, and then we can jump
If it's
to.
Mike Brody, no, we don't want.
Okay.
Mike, you're free to speak.
Yeah, where do I start? I guess so yeah, this has been really challenging, as you guys can tell. We've been trying our best. Normally we wouldn't take this long to get something like this, and we've been looking at this for over a year now, with Habitat and Iron Star and some of the other team members here. And I guess maybe just starting with the traffic, I guess it's pretty important to point out that all of those intersections are level of service A, and the one that was brought up and that Rory brought attention to as well. It's about 1 second level of service drop, which is basically 1 second of wait time that it adds, and that's in, I think, the 2031 build out. So
Which is 9.7. I thought.
It's, I think what Mike's pointing out is that the threshold
Current.
between a B and a C is 14 meets it, B, so,
Okay.
because they're ranges.
Okay.
So whatever it is, 7 to 14, up to 8 is an A, and then, so it's a, what he's saying is there's only a 1 second change, but it does change the definition of a level of service from a B to a C.
Correct. And so that's, 1 second in the car, then you can turn. So even with that pause there, I mean, that would have been it. Happy to address any specific questions on the traffic study. Probably worth discussing the geotech a little bit here, unless you guys have more questions on the traffic specific before I move on.
Any questions from the commission? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and I guess Donnie also brought up, and speaking of access, since we're on the topic, we did get that boundary line adjustment recorded for that secondary access end of last week. So we'll have that all in there for a future hearing. Moving on to the geotech. So we got our geotechnical investigation done out there. I think it is a lot of fill on the site, right? Like it's 17 feet in some places. And so we did additional investigations after that. We brought an excavator out to the site and we dug down. Most of the material that we found is really good material. It's just inconsistent in compaction throughout. And so what we're at least tentatively proposing is to run, so if you have your lots with a 20-foot front yard setback and a 10-foot backyard setback, to basically remove all the material in a line through those lots, and then kind of sort that material if there are organics within that, separate those out. And speaking with our geotechnical subconsultant on this, he felt like that was a pretty appropriate way to do it, and he agreed that most of this material is good, but then if we recompact that in lifts through the homes and document that, we should be in a pretty good spot with constructing homes on that. Again, it's a lot of the material that you see on the property here, and kind of that glacial till, silty, gravelly, cobbly material that we see in a lot of the places in the valley. And it has, there is a lot of material out there that's been waiting, like heavy, a lot of that site. And it is, I think we didn't want this to be the case, but we've been doing our due diligence on this and trying to make sure that we do have a way to mitigate this. Any questions specifically on the geotech for now? I imagine there would be.
It is what it is.
I don't think there's any from here, Mike.
Relating to that eastern access, like I think we've kind of covered it, but we had originally, with that Northland Phase 5C subdivision, we'd originally designed and approved a whole different plat, a whole different engineering design, and when they got out there pricing it out to actually do it, it wasn't going to pencil, and there wasn't a way to do it without a bunch of large walls along there. We then went back through preliminary plat to replat that site. And in that, I mean, there's about 50 feet of grade difference between the top of that hill and the site. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't feasible to make that access. I think PJ touched on that, but we can provide an exhibit, maybe a cross-sectional exhibit, to just kind of illustrate that for the commission. Relating to the sound, I know it looks really terrible, but I think it's important to recognize that 60 decibels is conversational speaking. So we did leave approximately, I think, 10 to 15 feet of space on that eastern edge to be able to accommodate sound mitigation. We haven't gone through and formally designed any of this stuff. You know, we're still pretty high level at this point, but it does seem like it's something we can accommodate through there. Yeah, I guess I'm here and available for any other questions if I haven't touched on anything, or if there's other concerns that the commission has. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any
And
questions?
Kate was asking a question when we brought Mike in there as far as the deviations. You wanted to
Yeah.
step through those?
Yeah, if we could go through those, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the application requests the following deviations from the subdivision regulations and zoning ordinance. A, utilities, easements, no row connection to east or west property line. B, allow for alley to provide primary access to lots when fronting on parkway. Minimum 20-foot wide parkway, 30-foot alley row. C, allow for clusters of 8 lots to be serviced from a private alley as the primary access. D, allow for lot sizes down to 3,100 square feet for single-family lots. E, allow for a minimum lot width of 40 feet on the residential lot serviced from alleys. These departures from the base zoning allow the creation of a variety of lot types, outdoor recreational opportunities, and promote affordable housing initiatives.
There's only one alleyway on this project, though. Is that correct?
There's
Plus,
alleys
all the
along the
ones on the west
cottage
side are
lots.
considered alleys as well. All those spurs that come off,
Oh, sure.
those are all
Okay.
considered alleys as well.
I understand that more now.
Yeah, and so that type of alignment, we've seen that on a number of different projects out there. Mountain View out on Foy's Lake has got a number in there. They haven't gotten to that phase yet, but Vista Bridge off of 2 Mile was one that was really recent that we approved through there. And in a lot of these configurations, what you've got is something that's not a full road coming in. They actually kind of have, as you can kind of see coming down through there, I don't know if you can point to those, they have shared yards essentially. And so the houses will face each other and have common area between them. And then having those alley roadways that would come in and access the lots. They'd also have pedestrian access off the front of the lot. So every parcel in there should have, not just vehicular access through the alley, but pedestrian access off the front. And you're seeing that in a lot of these projects because one of the really expensive aspects of doing a development is developing those rights of way out there. They're really expensive between, the utilities that go in, the pavement that happens in there. And as you can kind of see, as you're coming down that main north-south road, you wouldn't be getting anywhere close to the number of lots off the west side of the road with the traditional layout. And having these smaller lot sizes, and I think in this case from right down to like 3,100 square feet, you can do that because of those shared front yards and how they can get those on there. And you just get a lot more houses on that same street frontage with this type of a configuration. And it's starting to be something that they're doing not just elsewhere in town here, but in other communities as well.
Do those still meet the same design requirements for sidewalks and, or is that?
That's where, as conditions typically with these deviations would require that everyone would have a pedestrian connection that would come in, and I believe that they're providing for that. Rory, Mike had his hand up again on this.
Mike has something to say.
Go ahead.
Real quick, the other thing to note is that we have in our CCRs limiting the fence heights along those shared kind of parkways to 4 feet. So you have more of a front yard feel, and those houses are fronted towards the center there. There's a really nice example of it up in Whitefish in Trailview, which is another affordable housing community up there, or geared towards affordable housing with a lot of deed restricted units. I think having that shared space there kind of distributes that parkland a little better throughout the site rather than just having one big park. It's kind of more of a public area that's kind of more private and kind of in like a cottage configuration, as we've seen around in a lot of other communities in Montana and outside of Montana as well.
So Keith, is that water main a private water main then?
So inside the cottage lots, we're not looking to extend dead-end water mains to each one of those. We're looking at individual services, so it'd be a little bit of a deviation to our standards. Instead of having a dead-end water main with a fire hydrant at the end, the water services will come in. I can't remember, Mike might be able to remind me if it's on the alley side or I think it's the park side.
It looks like it's on the park side, yeah.
And so you'd have your meter pits along the city street section, and then the services would come out to each unit. So one condition that we're looking at as a requirement for that non-standard setup would be that we mark each one of those meter pits so we know which meter pit belongs to which address, because that's always our concern. But that way we don't end up with dead-end water mains that we have to flush and those water quality issues that you see with dead-end water mains.
You're gonna have not a lot of space left in your boulevard when you got 8 water meter pits out there.
For sure. So there are a lot of things about this plan that I genuinely like. And I say this as a resident of Northland. We do need more housing. I think that's an entirely good thing. I like that the single-family homes are up against the existing single-family homes to the south. I like that there is a buffer between this development and the development to the east. I think that's very beneficial and could serve both communities well, potentially. I like the mix of homes. I know there was some concern about the property values. There's actually studies that prove that that's not correct as far as bringing in a mix of housing. So that does not actually decrease home values. And I can't cite that right now, but I have read it. In general, I think there are a lot of good things. I am concerned about the amount of traffic on Northridge and Northland, being that everything funnels onto Northland Drive and then disperses from there. Up the road to the east on Northland, there's a funky eyebrow curve that makes a hard left as you exit the neighborhood and go down to 4 Mile. That's already a nightmare because it's just a really funky, people don't know whether to take it wide, they don't want to know whether to stop, it's just bad. So there's just some things about this that are concerning, and I'm not sure how we address those from that aspect.
Any other thoughts from Planning Commission?
Is the sound barrier that's south of this? Would that similar be carried north? And
I would assume it's similar, but I don't know.
I think in some of those
concrete wall.
Yeah, it's not a concrete
that's higher
wall.
than 6 feet, and this one I saw. This one's only 6 feet.
Right. One of the differences is that when there was existing development, that was part of the MDT grant and the project that came in, and so they did that standard kind of concrete wall that came there. Our subdivision regulations required the noise mitigation down to the 60 decibels, and there's different ways of doing that with additional buffering or something. But it doesn't provide for those tall walls, and usually people wouldn't do that anyway. So I don't know what they're looking for specifically with the fence, but up in the Bloomstone area, for example, they used sound fences as opposed to walls. They kind of, from the highway, they look like residential fences, but they're actually filled with crushed tires to deaden the sound. There's different ways of approaching that, but it wouldn't be the same, large concrete walls that MDT did as part of their project.
Any other thoughts? Do we need to give you a recommendation or?
No, usually at the end of a work session like this, we would see if there's enough information in front of you to move it forward. If you think that there's too much out there that still needs to be developed, then you can always ask for another work session. If not, we would continue to put together the information, do a staff report, and follow up with the public hearing next month.
Okay. I guess I can either pick on you one at a time, or you can either nod or shake your heads.
Without any objections, we would plan on moving it forward next month.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to lead the witness. How does the planning commission feel?
I'm all set for moving forward.
I would add on the traffic part of it, we do have our third-party analysis underway right now.
Okay.
So that will be something that we can bring forward if there are any findings from that analysis that would disagree with the findings of the report provided.
Yeah, I guess where I really struggle with traffic analysis in general is that it is purely based on road load, and it doesn't take into account any kind of pedestrian, bike, any kind of recreational use whatsoever. It's a problem. I know it's the standard, but it stinks. And, this is a neighborhood that has a lot of kids, and that's, mine is one of them. It's a little concerning that we're gonna add another 1,000 trips on this road every day. It's concerning.
And what I'd say is, with moving it forward doesn't mean that we've resolved all those issues, but we flushed, again, the intent here is to flesh out some of those, know what, the applicant might need to put together as we're working towards doing that public hearing next time, and so that they're aware of what those issues are that they need to identify, so.
And did they ask for a deviation on open space as well, or is that covered per regs?
I don't believe there was any deviation
Okay,
for
great.
open space.
Is there,
And we don't have an open space requirement per se anyway, we've got a parkland requirement.
That's what I meant.
But
Sorry.
yeah, and typically what you see in those situations is, you might have an area that's set aside for that, but they can meet that through clubhouses or different things. It's looking at the value. Usually the details on that are more determined after preliminary plat.
Yeah.
this rendering is in the packet, and it shows a connection out to the bypass, to the trail along the bypass. That will be a requirement, right, or not?
Sorry.
Is there a connection from inside the subdivision out to the trail along the bypass?
So in the rendering right here,
Yep.
that's the only thing that I've noticed that takes you from their subdivision onto the trail.
Okay.
And to note, that is, this area here is kind of the extent of where the sound decibel barrier is as well.
Yep. So, I mean, I know a lot of people will still have to walk to school and walk to the bus and that kind of thing, but hopefully from a recreation perspective, connecting to the bypass there gets people out
Yeah.
of the neighborhood.
No, I think that's great.
Mike would like to speak.
Oh, no, again?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, there is, I guess, and I'm sure that Ms. Walker's aware, but there is a connection on the south end here too. We were gonna do several of them, but kind of the grade differential there makes it a little challenging to have all of those parkways go through. But so we have kind of one at the north end of the site and one at the south end of the site, and then, but yeah, we are trying to maintain that connectivity to the pedestrian trail out there.
I guess anything specific within reason that the commission would like to see added to the application packet? If we are comfortable moving it forward?
I'd like to see that, what was mentioned about the cross-sectional and that elevation difference.
Okay.
Exhibit for that.
I think, yeah, just having an idea of how they relate to each other, and then I know that there's some grading between there.
It's pretty
There is a pretty big hill there. And I mean, they've cut it down some for the development of the neighborhood that's going on right now. But yeah, it's still significant. It's a hike.
Yeah, coming down there in a road,
It'd be,
Interesting.
it'd be entertaining in the winter.
Like we may have a new sledding hill in Kalispell. Okay, I guess seeing no complaints or anyone squawking to the contrary, I'm be happy to move this forward till next month's planning commission public hearing.
Right.
Anything else? Go home.